The Chaser Report is recorded on Gadigal land.
Striving for mediocrity in a world of excellence. This is the Chaser Report.
Hello and welcome to the Chaser Report with Dom and Charles. And
Hang on, no, Charles, I'm resigning.
oh,
I've got a principled objection. Now, look, you and I got together many years ago in a room and came up with a concept called the Chaser Report.
yes,
And I think your subsequent behaviour has completely undermined the nature of this.
Yes.
I can't do it anymore. On principle, then, I'm moving to the backbench of the podcast.
Oh.
And what I propose to do is that as you continue with the podcast, I
Yes.
will heckle. And I will try to put you off and interrupt. And that will allow me to exercise the freedom which I believe
Yes.
is my right, uniquely within this podcast format, unlike
Yes.
every other podcast. This is something.
except for the Greens or One Nation or any of yes, but go on, yes.
Yes, and I do so because I've learnt from Julian Lesser
Yes.
in the past little while that freedom of conscience and being able to say what you want is enormously important.
Where was Julian Lesser at any point in the last 10 years of the shit show that the Liberal Party had while he was in government? Is this the first thing in the last 10 years? Like, for 10 years, his government, the Libs, were in power.
Did you hear his press conference?
And now that he's suddenly out of power, he suddenly finds a conscience.
He says he tried to convince them, Charles. Well, what he said was, I spent a long time trying to convince my colleagues this was a good idea. I guess that was 10 years because he came up with the idea very long. He was in the room apparently
I
where
know,
the
he was,
notion of
yes.
a voice was actually invented.
Well, this is the tweet that he put out just a few minutes ago. So Julian Lesser was the Indigenous Affairs spokesman for the Libs. Obviously, the Libs last week said that they weren't going to support the Voice at all. They were going to bind against the Voice. And so he put out a tweet saying, almost 10 years ago, I sat down with a small group of constitutional conservatives and Indigenous leaders and worked on a proposal for constitutional recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Australians. The idea we developed was different. It was organic, it was consistent with our constitutional heritage, and it was a uniquely Australian idea designed for Australian conditions. The proposal was called The Voice.
Which I must say, given that the TV show The Voice, I think, started in about 2012.
Yes.
I'm bold to steal the name even then. But anyway, so just as a sidebar, Julian Lesser is was the Shadow Indigenous Affairs spokesperson because Ken Wyatt is no longer part of the party. Did he lose his seat? I think he might have. But he was an Indigenous Affairs spokesperson. Julian Lesser is not.
He is now, Ken Wyatt, by the way, quit the Liberal Party completely on the weekend.
Over this issue.
Anyway, point is, at any point, Julian Lesser could have resigned in the last 10 years over principles of conscience. Like, surely there were other things that went against his... Or is this the first thing that has ever happened in the Liberal Party that requires him to exercise a conscience? Is he fine with everything else that has happened in the last 10 years?
But Charles, Julian Lesser is a lifelong conservative.
Yes.
That means he's a believer in the status quo.
Yes.
So whatever the status quo may have been, presumably,
Yes.
that was what he was okay with, and then he was okay with that. And then, is he someone whose job was taken by Scott Morrison, by the way, at any point? Was he a minister in the Morrison government? I don't know that he was.
I don't know whether he was, yeah.
But presumably he was okay with that status quo as well until that was no longer the status quo. It's tough being a conservative because the status quo does keep changing as things evolve.
Yes, but surely the status quo now is to not... Anyway, look, point is, I have a very personal beef with this. Because,
really?
As you know, we actually went to uni alongside Julian Lesser. He was at a different university.
He was around. He's certainly around in the sort of... he was certainly a big figure in the young monarchist circles.
Yes.
There weren't many in the tent, but he was the leader of those. And it was a very small tent.
Australians for Constitutional Monarchy.
So even then he was very much the constitutional conservative. And the only one, I think, below the age of 30.
But anyway, so we were discussing, because my wife actually debated with him quite a lot when we were, like 20 years ago.
As did I.
And she went, Julian Lesser, like, he may be a conservative, but, he's a man of principle. He'll resign over this, right? And I said, no way. He's a cynic. He's a careerist. He's going to bind in behind Dutton and he's going to go full tilt on delivering a no vote and fucking over Indigenous people across Australia.
You
right?
thought he wouldn't do this. So
I thought he wouldn't do this, and so we had a long discussion, and I just went, nah, no way. He's staying. He is staying. Right. This was like yesterday
because this is the most senior job he's had. He was Shadow Attorney General as well, so very senior. Coalition front bencher.
Yes.
Until the resignation. So this is the highest he's ever, and then he stepped away from it.
So the point is, though, that he completely proved me wrong, which I hate, right? So this is the thing, right? So I think in some ways, though, I am right.
Oh.
Right. So even though he did actually, like, all the facts look
so your wife accurately predicted exactly what he did today.
Yes. But I think that at some level I am right.
Oh.
Because this is the ultimate careerist move, if you think about it a lot, right?
I'm curious to see how this works, given that it sounds on the facts, it sounds as though you were completely 100% wrong.
Yes.
And your wife was absolutely right.
Yes.
About Julian Lesser.
Yeah. Well, maybe just, if you look at sort of
the prediction that was made.
The surface facts.
Okay.
Right? But
well, I want to hear you argue this around as to why you were right. Come on.
But the reason why I was thinking he wouldn't resign is because he's a careerist. Like, he wants to, ultimately become a very senior Liberal Party politician, right? And my assumption was, well, the way to do that is to hang on to your job, right? But think about it. Maybe the ultimate careerist move at this point is to abandon the sinking ship that is the HMAS Dutton and move to the backbench, knowing that it's the HMAS Dutton is sort of almost like the HMAS Morrison was before it sank, right? Except maybe with fewer embarrassing sort of photo ops in hairdressers.
I love that you're using boat metaphors, by the way, given all that they've both said about stopping them. But anyway.
That's right. Anyway, pointing out, so my point is that actually at this point, the careerist move for any Lib who wants to actually have a career is to abandon the opposition to the Voice, move to the backbench, and then eventually they'll be proved right. Dutton will...
And they'll take over the new party.
Yes,
well,
exactly.
I read a very interesting op-ed a couple of days ago. I think it was in the New Daily, arguing that basically they have to completely reinvent themselves like the New South Wales Liberal Party. That the problem that the coalition has that it's run by Queenslanders where there's the LNP, there's no differentiation between Liberal and National, basically. And what's happened is that that's drawn the party far to the right, and that so what they need, if they're actually going to win back voters and elections and seats like in the Teal seats, they have to completely start again. So yes, maybe you're right. Maybe this is the beginning of the new Liberal Party. And the bizarre thing is, you wouldn't have thought that Julian Lesser, as a very dyed-in-the-wool conservative, would be the one to lead anything new. It's off-brand for him. He doesn't do new.
The Chaser Report. Less news, less often.
This article, actually, I should remember who wrote it, but I can't, actually said that the obvious leader for the new Liberal Party was Bridget Archer, the backbencher who basically says no to all the no's. Like
yes.
Basically, she's essentially an independent MP elected as a Liberal.
So what you're talking about is a new Liberal Party that supports the Voice, presumably supports change on climate change.
Yeah.
What else? What else? Sort of housing affordability. What does it do? Like
action, like centrist action.
Centrist action.
Socially progressive. Economic conservative, national security.
Yeah.
So essentially, the Labor Party.
Yeah, we've just solved it.
There should be a government of national unity. They should just told everyone is disappointed by Labor, and everyone is disappointed by
everyone.
The New South Wales strain of the Liberal Party, which is
everyone.
Which is, won't they be delighted to see the government of national unity who everyone dislikes equally?
It'll be like Saddam Hussein, where he gets remember he used to get 99.6% of the vote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It'll be like that.
So we've absolutely solved it. So you think this is both a principled and utterly careerist move?
Oh, brilliant. It's brilliant cynicism. On a point of principle, to quit. So it looks like you're being all principled, but in fact, you're just lining yourself up to lead the Liberal Party. The new Liberal Party.
The thing I'm confused by is he's made it very clear that he's campaigning for a yes vote, right? He's come out and said, look, I think there's a problem with the proposal. I want to change the proposal, but I'm campaigning for yes.
Yes.
Which is a bit odd because he wants to edit the text, but then vote yes anyway to the text that's there. So I don't really understand that. But also, Julian Lesser saying yes to a constitutional change? Like,
Yes.
how has this happened?
Next,
Who got to him?
Next, he'll be lining up to do a republic.
Who got to Julian? This is not the Julian Lesser we know from
I
the
don't know.
public
Well,
debate.
this is why I say I don't think it's real. I think it's cynicism. I think he's looked at the polling numbers and he's gone, which way is the wind blowing? It's not blowing in favour of HMAS Dutton.
Are you thinking leader by Christmas?
Oh, I'm saying leader by the end of the Easter break.
Really? So at
Yeah.
the end of the school holidays.
Yeah.
By the end of the Easter school holidays, here's a big call from Charles Firth.
And look, I've never been wrong before. If you drill down,
If you drill down, is that Julian Lesser will be the opposition leader by the end of the school holidays. You know what though, Charles? You know what he's done? He went out of his way in his statement, in his written statement and in the press conference, Charles. He went out of his way to say he fully supports Peter Dutton's leadership, which is what they say.
It's on.
It's what they say,
Yes.
isn't it?
I remember when Paul Keating said that he supported Bob Hawke's leadership when he went to the backbench.
Do you remember when Julia Gillard said she had more chance of being a full forward for the Western Bulldogs, thereby trying to suck up to voters in her electorate, than becoming Prime Minister in place of Kevin Rudd? Well, no, she was Prime Minister within weeks.
Well, Dom,
weeks.
You, at the beginning of this podcast, announced that you were moving to the back bench of this Chaser Report podcast. Do I have your full support?
Absolutely you do. And I'm expecting to be the solo host of this podcast by the end of the Easter break.
Fuck. Shit.
So, Charles, what does this then mean for The Voice, for the ongoing debate? Is
Well,
Julian Lesser going to influence anybody here? Is he going to help save the yes case that he thinks needs saving?
Well, I think there's a couple of steps here, which is, okay, we had Ken White resign over the weekend from the Liberal Party. Julian Lesser has done it on Tuesday. Mm-hmm. Surely this is a drip, drip, drip. Like, and I'm not talking about Peter Dutton. I'm talking about like the process by which
You're talking about the boats that he didn't let in that then sank. Yeah.
But I'm talking about the fact that surely there will be now other less senior Liberal Party colleagues who will now drift to the back bench.
Well, who's the senior moderate? Simon Birmingham, isn't it? Is he his shadow?
Well, no, Simon Birmingham's already staked his claim in lack of principle, which is that he doesn't agree with the decision to bind for no.
Oh, yes.
But he's just going to be quiet about it.
Oh, that's right. So as a member of Shadow Cabinet, he's bound to pursue the party position.
He's bound to just do something that he really profoundly thinks is wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the happy medium is just go, and don't talk about it. So,
so
if you can't think of a nice way to say no, don't say no at all.
Well, as they always say, philosophers always say, evil reigns. Evil doesn't. No, evil. What's it?
The one thing that takes is for evil to reign is for
good people
good
to
front
remain
benches
silent.
to remain silent.
Yeah.
That's right. Something like that.
The point being that we're from here. Well, I think first of all, the whole the Liberal Party politics has to play out, which I think will actually take several weeks of just drip, 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 people leaving and it all splitting apart. And then there'll be this, as you say, small radical rump left who are vociferously arguing no, but they'll have no real relevance. Like, if any of the arguments that came out over the weekend against The Voice is anything to go by, there's basically no real case against The Voice.
The weird thing about the no case, and
they
Peter
just want
Dutton's
details.
No case,
They want details. They want details. Don.
But the bizarre thing is, he's Peter Dutton calls it a Canberra voice and said it's going to be this sort of national body, dictating to the parliament. But I guess now I see the virtue of what the government was trying to do by having absolutely no details.
Yes.
You can't really run a scare campaign against something with no details when the whole idea is, well, we'll figure it out as the parliament. You'll be in the room where we vote on what it is. And so Julian Lesser's clearly gone, well, okay, we'll just sort it out through the parliamentary process.
And I think, in fairness to the proposal, the idea is that the representative body of sort of 24 people who would constitute The Voice would come from places other than Canberra. There would be representatives from remote communities. Now, far be it from me to suck up to the remote community bubble that is such a problem in this sort of world. But I think that the whole Canberra bubble thing got it sort of about 5 seconds of play, and then everyone realised that it's a very problematic argument to run, because essentially part of it is saying, oh, well, there's all these Indigenous people and they've all been made professors and they'll end up on there. And then you've got this whole problem of sort of going, well, so you don't
want
Indigenous
experts?
people
You don't
should
want Professor Megan Davis, who's been a big part of this?
You don't want Indigenous people to get an education? Is that where you're heading
it's
down
also,
now?
The other funny thing is that he said, look, the coalition supports regional and local voices, right?
Yeah.
So what that then means is if that
Yes.
happens, you've got, I don't know, 70, 80 different mini bodies
Yes.
all making proposals.
Yes.
Does the Prime Minister have to read through all of them before making a decision? Like,
No,
without a national voice to
no.
actually pull these things together,
No.
how can the process even work?
No, Dom, you misunderstand. What they want is Indigenous people to be able to influence local councils and state parliaments, right? So, as long as all they look at is things like garbage collection times and, whether the graffiti is cleaned up at the local bus stop, that's the sort of issues that Indigenous people are allowed to have a voice in. If it's anything to do with federal politics, then they've got to fuck off.
But then, even if the Prime Minister had to be consulted, they could just go, look, I read through all 80 submissions. There's no common ground here. I'm terribly sorry. There's clearly not. If only there were one voice speaking to bring together these threads. But there isn't, so
No.
we're just going to do what we're going to do anyway.
Okay, well, there you go. Dom, I'm sad to see you go.
It's the right thing to do. It's the right thing for me and my family and for the country.
Yes.
And it's the right thing for you, Charles, frankly.
Well, I look forward to your ongoing support from the back end
Yep.
of this podcast.
That's right.
And
I'll be right behind you within
doing?
stabbing difference.
What's that?
Within stabbing distance.
What are you doing?
At last. There's one voice we're not going to miss. Ag is from Road. We're part of the Iconoclast podcast network. I say we, but it's actually just me now.
Bastard.